episode of The Spicy Life. I am your relationship expert and magnetic matchmaker, Spicy Mari. And to join me here in the G spot, that's guest spotlight, do not get scared, I have the amazing, the incredible Dr. J. Barnett. The cloud goes wild. Okay, let me tell you about this incredible person. Dr. J. Barnett is an esteemed author, dynamic speaker, and widely acknowledged expert in mental health. Now more than ever, he's making an incredible mark in his field with his impactful storytelling, innovative strategies, and insightful lessons. In his mental health mission, he focuses on mental wellness and holistic restoration. A former professional football player, Dr. J integrates the principles of athletic discipline into his clinical work, fostering a winning mindset. He is also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Okay.
Shout out to the good noobs.
Hey, Ski-O. Okay, I see you. So happy to finally get you actually in my seat.
I know.
I've been trying, you and I actually got together on a show. I think it was just how we originally met. We were guests on the show. Mm-hmm. And then I circled back, brought you on the Spicy Life for a podcast during COVID. So it was on Zoom. And now I finally have you in the studio.
I know. Listen, your timing is impeccable because you reached out and you was like, hey, when you're going to be in LA next. And I was boarding a flight to LA. And I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. And I was like, did she know I was on my way to LA? It was wild, and I was just like, yo, man, this is crazy. So yeah, I just happened to be out here working.
You got to stay on it. This is perseverance, okay? When I want to bring a guest in, you got to stay on them. Do not give up. It's just like dating.
Yeah, yeah, just like dating. But I also think too, timing is everything, and sometimes we don't realize that the timing that I believe in timing that operates under the Kairos timing. It's like it's always divine alignment, and it was just divine that I was here. You reached out, and everything worked out. And this was actually my off day because I go back to work tomorrow.
Ain't got good.
So yeah, I'm out here establishing some social and emotional learning programs for boys.
Yes.
Yeah, so out here in LA, so it's exciting work.
Okay,
Yeah.
I love this. You are going to do on this episode with me a great service. We are going to tell men how to heal, and we're going to tell women how to help their men heal.
Yeah.
So this is your expertise, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just heal, bro.
Yes, just heal, bro. Yeah.
This is your expertise.
Yeah.
So before we get started with all the juicy questions about healing, you are going to share when you first fell in love with yourself. What was that moment, that defining moment? Maybe you fell out of love and you had to fall back in love. But there is, I want you to pinpoint the key moment that you were like, dang, I love me. I need me. I'm great.
I don't know if that moment is a moment that I was aware of, as most men, and we know this because the way men are socialized and the way we are underdeveloped when it comes to the emotional capacity of understanding our awareness and our ability to sort of recognize certain feelings and emotions. And I don't think most men really have an idea of what falling in love with themselves look like, more so than having the awareness if they fell out of love. So to fall out of something, you have to have the knowledge that you was once in it.
Yeah.
I think for me, that awareness happened probably a few years ago, after all of the things and the elevation and the expansion of my gift being recognized, because I think we often look at individuals who are working in the space of healing as if they've arrived. And I like to say it's a continuous journey of discovering. And I think for me, that moment of discovering was embracing and accepting that, man, I'm him. And for me, being him was accepting the flaws, accepting the growth, accepting the things that I couldn't change. I think a lot of men struggle with that because they're wanting to sort of correct the things that are wrong and then correct the things that they can no longer change. And I had gotten to a point where I said, I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace. And I can't change some decisions that I probably should have made some different, things to say or do. And I just accepted all of me. And I think at that moment, I fell in love. I had I had this self-awareness, after, going to therapy, and as I've shared my testimony across the country with my tour, 33 cities in 3 years. 36 cities in 3 years with the Just Heal Bro tour, reaching 18,000 men,
Wow.
sharing my story of surviving not one but 2 suicide attempts after football. Therapy allowed me to have an understanding that I was a person who had some value. And I don't think a lot of men believe that they have value. And once you believe that you have value, there is a different level of functioning that you begin to operate in, which, from that point, I went back to school and got my doctorate, and then went back to school and got my doctorate degree. But it was in a moment where I was on stage, and an older black guy came to me and said, "Brother, you have arrived." And when he said that, it wasn't about that I had arrived at this place of achievement. He said, "You have arrived because you are using your life as a instrument, and you're using your voice, your story to impact the lives of others." And he said, "Brother, we don't need you to be perfect. We just need you to continue being you." And at that moment, Spice, I was like,
Ooh.
boom, freedom. And I just fell in love with myself.
Wow. He gave you essentially permission to give yourself permission to not be perfect and to just keep on the trajectory that you're on.
Yeah. Because it's challenging when you feel the weight of the call, when you feel the weight of the cries of men. I can feel the pain on stage. I can feel the anxiety. I can feel the trepidation. I can feel the stories that they are afraid to tell. I can also feel the things that they think about themselves from the experiences that they've had. And that becomes such a weight. And at times I carry the burden like, man, I can't get to all of them. But in that moment, that older black gentleman allowed me to feel that I was doing the best that I can with what I was given, and that all that I was doing was enough. Because sometimes as men, I feel like everything around us is associated with our performance. And even in the healing space, I was just trying to perform because I'm like, God, I don't want any man to feel like he's left behind.
Well, so you had mentioned something in your testimony right now. Why does someone, right, why, and men in particular, why do these men or even you feel unvaluable? Why do you feel devalued? Why do you feel you don't have value?
I think,
what's causing that? What's creating that?
I think for a lot of men, when you don't have an understanding of who you are because you didn't get a clear perception of who you were to become and who you were born to be, which I think comes from a father or it comes from great males that support you in understanding your identity, you feel lost and you don't have a compass. And when you don't have a compass, you don't really have any hope.
Whew.
And you have a lot of men who are hopeless because there's no compass, there's no blueprint, there is no map, no guide. There's nothing that is saying, go this way, become this, you can, you will, you must. There's none of that. And when football was over for me, that was gone because in some ways I did depend on the coach to kind of be that compass for me, because a coach would tell you, hey, go to class and, take care of your work, stay out of trouble. And to have that. And it starts from when you're a little boy. And when boys don't have structure, we automatically know there's no love.
When boys don't have structure, you automatically know there's no love.
There's no love because when you have structure, there's a sign of love. And structure provides order. Order provides a healthy framework for you to not only to just operate in, but for you to live in. Like I can remember kids when I was in elementary, and I can remember kids like, yo, man, my mom don't care nothing about me, man. She let me do whatever I want to do. And we know that when there's no structure, we know there's no love.
Yeah.
When there's structure, we know that you are loved well because structure represents boundaries. There are guardrails that you have to be in this house by 6 o'clock
Yeah.
because this is for your own protection.
Correct.
You can't run with those guys because I need you to understand your value.
Yep.
I need you to understand that you are different from them. And I don't want you to end up like those guys because they don't have structure.
Yeah.
There's no dad in the house and the mom is overwhelmed. And so she's kind of letting them run amok. So, it's important for us to have that framework. And when you don't have that framework, when I look at most men today, I just see hopeless individuals that are just navigating through life at the best that they can. And it's heartbreaking to see.
And I see that with you. I also see them partnering with women, right? Because they might not be successful in all areas of their life, and they still are searching for acceptance, love, and sometimes through relationship, they can feel that, right? Those sentiments of being cared for. Maybe they didn't get it in their adolescence, but unfortunately, because they're wounded,
Yes.
they wind up attracting their wound mate.
Yes. And they end up attracting from their deficits. And I don't think we give attention enough to deficits, meaning the things that we didn't get.
Yeah.
And typically, when you see a person who is attracting someone from their deficits, there's no awareness. There's no level of consciousness that I am attracting what I didn't get.
Yeah.
All I know is that what this person gives me is something that I feel like I need to hold on to, which is why it's difficult for them to detach from these persons. Because if the mother wound was created from the mom only looking to the boy as being the man of the home and sort of being this surrogate husband and this surrogate father, in some cases being a provider and feeling like at the age of 14, 15, you got to go out here and make some money, and hearing their mom says, hey, if you ain't got no job, if you're not paying no bills, if you're not giving in this house, you need to find somewhere to go. To hear those things, it creates such a deep wound in those men because you know that you didn't receive any nurturing or any care. So what happens unconsciously, these type of men, they don't seek out a woman, they seek out a mother in a woman. So you end up dating someone to give you a part of your mother that you didn't receive.
Yeah.
And, or on the other side of that spectrum, if your mother was in an abusive relationship and that you couldn't save her, you end up choosing women that you have to save. And
Big on it.
So, and and I can say that because I was engaged at 33, and I can vividly step back at the age now 42, almost 43. I can say to myself why I chose her, and why did I want to get married? Why did I, choose to propose at that time? There was a part of me because she had 2 kids. Here I am, 33 years old, no kids.
Yeah.
And I remember my godmother saying, Jay, I'm just confused. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I like her. I think she's a sweet girl. But she was just like, do you really want to go into something, at 33 and, you kind of finding out who you are, you just kind of gotten, into therapy. Do you really think you need to enter into a marriage with someone with 2 kids? And I was like, well, I mean, and I really didn't have a clear answer until I went back into therapy. And my therapist says, why are you marrying her? I knew she had a son and a daughter. And for me, what I felt is, what if I can be to them what I didn't have?
Okay.
And looking at her, who was an amazing woman, but when I'm looking at the vision that God had put in me and then what God had showed me, it didn't really align. But there was a part of me that was looking at her and says, well, maybe I can be to them what I always wanted. Maybe I can be to her what I thought my mom should have had because of the dynamic of her and my father. And what my therapist said to me, are you trying to rescue your mom through her? And it made me pause. And that's when I realized I had to do some deep introspection and to realize that it's not that she is a bad person, I'm a bad person, and all of those different things. Sometimes we can choose from unhealthy places.
Yeah.
Because if it's not from a place of healthy selection, you will end up making a decision that would end very badly. And it can cause a lot of discord and cause a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And we called off the engagement mutually because I think we both knew that this is not right. And I always respect her and love her because the way she handled it and the way I handled it in such a way that there was such respect and such honor.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, Jay, we're really on different paths. And I never forget she said this. She says, Jay, you're really called to really do some great work in this earth, man. And she was like, dude, you're different. And she said, I'm not into like being seen and being with somebody who's going to be well known. And she said, and I don't want to share you with the world. And I respected her for that. For some people, like, well, how can she say that? How can she not want to be with somebody that has a purpose? I respect and honor truth because it allowed me to go on my journey and to become who I became.
Well, there's
and who I
thousands and millions that you're supposed to be saving while you were looking at, let me save her and her children. There's so many more children that essentially need to be saved.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And she's like, no, but I want you to just like save us. And you're like, no, but I have like thousands in the masses to feed.
And here was the other part. She never asked me to save her. This is why
But you were trying to do that on your own subconsciously.
Because there was something in me that was unhealed.
Yeah.
There was something in me that was still broken. There was something in me that I hadn't yet really done some deep research and explored. What is that attached to? And this is my challenge to men, is this is why men have to heal. So we can not only choose from a healthy place, but we can begin to operate in life from a healthy place and not make a decision and then try to in some way relegate that to the woman and says, well, it's you. No, it's you. And here's the thing. There was such respect that we had for each other. I think this is like the second time that I did Sherry Shepherd's show, and she's married now, and you know, living the life that she wanted, and the ex, and she DM'd me, and she said, "I'm so proud of you," and she said, "You stayed focused, and everything that you sat down and told me when we were dating, you did it all." She said, I will always honor and respect you because I've never seen a man pursue a vision and stick with it until it manifested. Because oftentimes, most men don't have a vision for their life. And when you don't have a vision for your life as a man, you wonder. And then you pull women into your wondering and you become lost, she become lost. You have confusion, you have chaos, and no one has a clear picture on what are you doing. And I just wish that brothers can take ownership in knowing that it's on us.
What does it look like, though? Because I want them to clearly understand. I want people to recognize or identify if they're the person who you're talking about that's lost and wandering. Because I don't think that they're aware. They just feel pain, but I don't think that they are like aware that they are lost. They can't really sometimes pinpoint that they are lost or that they're not a leader or they're misguided.
I'm glad that you asked it. How do we pinpoint it? And brothers, hear me when I say this, is acknowledging that you don't know what you're doing. It's okay to humble yourself to say, I don't know what I am doing. One of the first things that happens when you come into therapy is the acknowledgement that you're in pain. It's the acknowledgement that you don't have all the answers. And what happens when you acknowledge that, you open yourself up to receive not just help, because we often think, well, I don't want nobody to help me. Sometimes it's being open to expand your thought process, to say, okay, where did I learn how to be a man? And then the next question is, the people that I learned this from, what are their lives? What is the reflection?
Where are they at?
You know, where are they at?
Yeah.
And then what does their life represent for you? Would you want to be like these men? Because it could have been explicit and it could have been implicit. It could have been, I learned from my uncle, or I learned just through listening to some dudes, you know what I'm saying, on the radio talk about, you know what I'm saying?
You got podcasts, on social media, on TV,
and you know, from television shows. It's acknowledging that one of the first things that I was able to do on my therapeutic journey was to acknowledge that I was in pain and I was hurting from what I experienced from my dad, what I experienced from my stepdad. I had a lot of abandonment issues in my childhood womb. It was not having a dad to guide me, being the only son. And when I acknowledged that, it allowed me to become open, to be receptive of how do you begin to take the steps to repair. And I think until you are open to repair, you'll always be closed and you won't be able to receive.
Yeah.
And I would say this, brothers, surrendering is everything. Surrendering to the process and saying, let me lean into this space that, man, I don't know what it's like to be a man. I don't have a great description.
Yeah.
I didn't have a great model. I didn't have a blueprint. I'm just out here winging it. And we all know when you're out here winging it, you have a lot of screw ups. It's like on the job training with no trainer.
Right.
And I think if we get brothers to just make that step, I have a lot of guys that are hopping my DMs, and I will say there are a lot of men that are becoming open to say, bro, I've taken myself as far as I can go. I got to get some help. And I think that's the first step, to say, I've taken myself as far as I can go. And women typically don't see us acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And we don't want women to see that, because there's a part of us that says, if you see me acknowledge that, what's your view of me now?
They are afraid of the judgment of not looking like the stereotypical man that's supposed to be able to provide, create provision. They're scared of the perspective that they are weak.
And I think my challenge to the ladies that will see this is that your level of compassion will make the world of a difference. And when I say your compassion, is your ability to hear beyond what you think about him. Because I've seen in sessions, and I've seen this on the internet and see this on social media, that a woman can hear something about a man and she can develop thoughts about him and then verbalize it, and it immediately kills his energy. It kills his ability to process. It kills his morale. It kills his confidence. It can kill him literally in some cases. I've heard of instances where men have taken their life because of something that they heard. Because for us, what you say to us goes a long ways. It's not what you do, it's what you say to us, because we know that the physicality of a man and a woman, like you can't physically overpower a man, but there's a lot of power in this.
In the tongue, yep.
It's a lot of power in this. And I'm so grateful that my mother, the way she moved with me, taught me the value in how she chooses her words, even when she speaks to me, which helped me to understand how I want my wife to speak to me. You know what I mean? Because it matters.
How do you want your wife to speak to you?
And then also how how I want to speak to my wife.
I want to hear this. How?
For me, I want my wife to be able to grab me when I can't grab myself. That her softness, her touch, because sometimes a touch can speak words that the mouth cannot project.
Yep.
And sometimes the touch is, hey, it's okay. I know you're upset, but it's okay. But then also my wife to be able to speak to me with her eyes is to be able to give me a look of affirmation, a look of support. And even in moments where she's like, nigga, I don't know what you, like, I don't know what you doing, but if this is what we on, I'm gonna ride with you.
Ooh.
And then behind the scene, there's a conversation. Hey, I don't know much about what's happening right now, but if this is what you think, I'm willing to support you on it. Whether it's a yes or no, whether it's a right or wrong, I'll stand with you. However, maybe we should kind of pause, over here until this is, fully, manifested or whatever. And I think that grabs me because I know for myself personally, with how my gift operates and with how I pour into people, I need that from her, from a great deal, because I can get lost in the work, and I can get lost in my thoughts, and then I can also get lost in the whispers, because ladies, men hear voices. We hear all of the things that somebody said to us when we were 9. And let me tell you something, it doesn't matter how successful he is. The whispers are still there.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know how to value ourselves in moments that we're questioning ourselves. So it takes a woman who has a deeper understanding that I married a confident man, but he's not confident in this moment. And let me hold space for him to not be confident and me not make him feel that he's less than because he's not confident in this moment. Because it's going to happen. Your relationship is going to go through seasons. Your life is going to go through seasons. We have to give permission for that. Man, and when you give permission, it's also to allow for a moment of submission. Okay, maybe I need to submit to whatever this process is.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten away from holding space for each other to where it's become very individualistic driven in relationships, to where, well, what's in it for me? And rather than saying, no, what's in it for us? We came on the idea of us and on the premise of us. And I think we've gotten away from that. And I think it's just becoming more and more unfortunate that I don't see a lot of partnerships in relationships. And I'm not talking about from a business perspective, but understanding that when the scripture says, how can two walk together except they agree, is how do we build something if we don't come together to hear each other? The agreement is not, you think like me or you speak as I. The agreement is, what's the mission? We came together for a reason, that it's not us against us, it's us against the issue, it's us against whatever this problem is. And so for me, that's what grabs me, because that's what I teach, that's what I provide in the therapeutic experience. But I also think that is what is needed in order for both persons to thrive in their purpose. Because when we are loved well and when we're supported well, you have no other choice but to thrive.
Well, I also think too, as you remind, women to be careful with their tongue, the power of the tongue is detrimental. Like it can, you said, kill you, but then at the same time, it can also breathe life into you.
Absolutely.
And I think that being mindful of that, right? Of like in this moment, in this very moment, I can destroy you, but I can also uplift you. Which one am I going to choose?
Man,
We got to take a beat sometimes, because sometimes you hurt us and we want to inflict that pain back to you and don't realize the severity of that cut, right? Because you never forget what we said. You're like, oh, I'm going to stick that one in my pocket.
Yeah.
And and it's why we have to actually like operate from, you know, the mindset of, like you said, what's the mission? What's the goal? Because if what I'm about to say right now to you is going to hurt you, and that is going to get us further away from the goal, further away from what I actually even want to achieve with you, or what I actually want you to feel with me in this moment, right?
Right.
Am I going to push you away, or am I going to pull you in right now with what I'm about to say?
Yeah, that's that right there, Spice. Do my words draw you or push you? That's what you have to ask yourself. Will what I say draw him closer? Same to the guy. Will what I say draw her closer, or will it push her away?
Yeah.
And I think that is critical, because I can remember all of the moments that a woman spoke into my life, and I'll never forget it. I can pull them up to. I can go back to this moment where this girl I was dating, and we dated for a while, and I can remember being in a very low moment, and she said, I know you are struggling right now. But she says, man, I see you. And she says, I see you. And she says, I see what you're not saying, Jay. I hear it. And in that moment, I couldn't say anything to her, because it had me in a chokehold. Yeah. Because
you're like, oh no, you see me.
Man, like it had me in a chokehold, and I felt arrested by her words, and I felt arrested by her level of awareness and intentionality, because I wanted to say what it was, but I couldn't. And eventually I end up sharing, you know, what was, you know, on my heart, and what was kind of just really, you know, pressing me. But when she said that, man, I told her, I was like, yo, man, this has me really choked up. And she was like, you know, come on, tell me more. And I was like, well, you know, it was hard, because tears started to flow. Because I said, I can't remember many times somebody seeing me in a low moment and them still seeing the king in me. And them not talking to the little boy as if he's incompetent. Because if you talk to the little boy as if he's incompetent, the man knows he doesn't have a chance. Because you just killed all that he's been relying upon.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it just really made me feel valued, because I had made a huge investment financially into my career, and it wasn't working out for me. And I was just sharing like how upset I was, that I felt like, man, this has been a waste of money. This has been a waste of time. And I remember her saying to me, she says, listen, whatever it is, I got you. And I was like, no. She says, no, whatever it is, I got you, Jay. She says, I see how hard you work. And I see the hours that you put into what you do. Man, it did something to me. And to this day, that never leave me. And that experience has given me an opportunity to know that there are women, and there are women who see beyond the surface.
Really quick, how does a woman determine, though, if she should lean into that, right? Because for some of my listeners, some of my audience, they actually, similar to what you experienced with your ex-fiance, they are accustomed to being saviors. How do they determine, should I lean in and pour more love into this person, or am I just trying to rescue him and change him or save him when he needs to be saving himself? How does a woman know how to navigate that situation?
Well, you know how to navigate that situation through how that man shows up for himself. In my journey, I was intentional about going to therapy. I was intentional about getting the help that I needed. Like, I didn't want to miss a session.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to miss a conversation with my mentor. I mean, I was so intentional. And then you could see the benefits and you can see the evidence of the work that I was doing, because it showed, it exuded through how I was handling myself and how I was handling others around me. And I think that it's important for women to look at, is he intentional about his own work? Or is his intention only attached to your work? Because he knows that you are going to put in the effort. But you have to realize, ladies, that you can aid in the healing, but you can't be the healer.
That was going to be my next question. Can we heal you?
No, you cannot. You know, when you think, and I'm going to go biblical for a second.
Let's go there.
There's a story in the Bible where there is a lame man at the pool of Siloam, and you know Jesus is passing through, and the lame man, you know, tells Jesus, "Well, every time I go to get in the pool, somebody gets in before me." So this is a man that wants healing, but he has multiple excuses why he can't get healed, and he says every time he tries to go, somebody beats him. And Jesus simply says to him, "Will thou be made whole?" Then he tells him, "Pick up your bed and walk." Picking up your bed and walk, I liken it to, you have to choose healing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes women can want it more than the man.
Yep.
And if he doesn't make the choice, let me tell you some sisters, he'll resent you for it. And we have to be careful of choosing people when they're sick. Because when they get well, they'll make a different decision with you. Because they're well. And somebody gets well, they feel, well, I don't need you.
Yeah.
I've heard, I'm sure you have, a lot of women like, it's like, I just made him better for the next woman.
Yep.
You have to recognize.
A lot of us are guilty of doing that.
Ladies, you have to recognize quickly before you begin exerting your energy, your time, your resources, that listen, if he's a man that you see him putting in the work, I'm not saying trying, because you're only doing or you're not. Somebody's like, well, I'm trying to get better. No, you're either getting better.
What do those actions look like?
Or you're not.
Yeah.
What are the actions? What are the corresponding actions? Meaning that, are you seeing the intentionality? Are you seeing the effort? Are you seeing the evidence, like he's going to therapy, he's journaling?
The investment.
And the investment in self. And brothers, if you don't make an investment in self, you would never make an investment into someone else.
Facts.
Because relationships is an investment.
So to your point then, when it comes to a woman pouring into her man, she needs to be looking at, is he currently investing in himself first?
Absolutely.
Then I will invest in him, versus you're not investing in yourself. I'm just going to invest because I think I'm going to save you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to see what is his intentionality, and I'm using his word, overly using his word, because I really want you to really take this with you. Intentionality with himself. When I started therapy after my second suicide attempt, and my godmother said to me, "You got to get some help," because my second suicide attempt was in a home. I want you to hear this. I was such a compassionate person that I did not want my godmother to come in and find me in a mess. Like, I wanted to shoot myself, but I was living with her. But my compassion says, oh man, you cannot leave a mess and leave this traumatic scene in her head for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So I overdosed. And when we got on the other side of that and we're sitting down and we're having a conversation, and she says, Jay, you have to get some help. Why did you do that in my home? And I didn't really have any answers on why. I knew, again, it's pain. I was just in so much pain, and it was recycled pain, because if you don't release it, if you don't dispose it, if you don't allow yourself to rid it out of your body, it just becomes a recycle and a cycle of just replaying the thoughts. And as you replay the thoughts, you're triggered all over again.
Yeah.
Once you come down from the trigger, you'll do good. All of a sudden something happens and you re-trigger. And it was just like, I was just tired of that cycle. And she said, what does that look like? Great question. I said, well, I'm going to go to therapy, and I'm going to, work with a mentor. And I had a guy that was really trying to work with me. But again, when you're a man that has been hurt, you don't understand other men trying to build a relationship with you. You reject them, because you don't have you don't have an ability to receive well, because you feel like he's just going to be what every other man has been. Mm-hmm. And there was a man that told me before this attempt that he didn't know that I was going to, but he had offered. He says, hey, listen, man, if you're willing to, to grow, and, I'll make the investment. If you're willing to make the investment. I was like, man, I ain't really got time for that, brother. I'm, I'm on some other stuff. But I became intentional because I wanted to be better. I didn't just want to live. I wanted to be better. And I didn't want to keep telling that same story about my dad. And it takes a man who's at the end of his road and he says, I want a new story. And if he's telling you, ladies, that he wants a new story, it's okay for you to ask him a question. What does that look like?
Yeah.
That's not probing. That's not, picking. That's a real question to say, okay, what does that look like? Because if you're going to walk this out with him, you need to understand how to walk with him in support. That if you're going to go to therapy, I want to know how I can support you. Do I need to be praying for you on days that you're in therapy, when you come home, or if we don't live together? Do you just want me to wait before I reach out to you to talk to you and kind of let you decompress and process those things? It's important for us to have those conversations. And my godmother challenged me on that. And I began to invest in myself. And after 2 years, because I was staying with her, and after 2 years, I came to her. I started working at a group home with girls, because I was always creating. I was always creating programs. And I told her, I said, I think I want to go back to school and become a therapist. And so she sat me down. She's like, let's talk about that. And it was one of those things, again, challenging me to articulate, challenging me to convey the plan, the vision. Yeah. Because from that point,
let's map it out.
She knew how to support me. So, and again, I'm so transparent in my story, because at this time, I was trying to figure out my life. I didn't have a place. I was staying with my godmother at 32 years old and trying to figure out life. And she said, if you're going to go to school, you're not going to move out. She says, you're going to stay here till you finish. She said, my godmother was never able to have kids. And so I became her godson. And so she said, nope, I want you to have peace as you're going through this process. She says, you're not going to pay any bills. She said, you're going to save your money. You're going to pay off your debt. And I was a trainer. I'm going to show you how this is just so, was such a blessing for me to have her in my life, because it taught me so much. I was a trainer. I had a fitness company. I trained pro athletes. My godmother was an amateur golfer. She says, you're going to train me 3 days a week. And she paid me $750 a month. A month.
And she gave you a little jobby job.
You know what I'm saying? And, and of course my business did well, but she says, and here's the other part. I could have gone out to get a place, but she said, no. She says, I need you to have a place where you can focus. And through that investment, I often tell brothers, I share that with them, through that investment, I finished my degree. I finished everything that I started, I finished. Yeah. And today she gets to say, you know what? She said, I knew you was going to do it. I said, how did you know? She said, because you took the first step and invested into yourself first. And she said, when I saw that, I was willing to take the next step to support you.
Yeah.
So for those ladies, if he can't take that first step, don't you take not one step. Stop taking steps when he won't even move.
What about the couples that she recommends therapy to her man and he's like, okay, I'll go find me a therapist. Should she go seeking a therapist for him, or should he do it for himself? Is that okay to assist there?
Here's why I think it's okay to assist. And some brothers are not as resourceful as they think they are. Mm-hmm. And they're not as resourceful as they think they are because they don't have great friendships. When you have great friendships, you're very resourceful, meaning that you can call on another man and say, hey, bro, I'm looking for a therapist. And he was like, yo, give me an hour.
Yeah.
I'll hit you back. Most men do not have that. So to have the support of your wife or your partner and your spouse, it's okay. Comes back to the surrendering and the humility. You don't know what you're doing, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm so happy when men reach out to me and say, hey, man, I'm looking for a therapist, brother. Can you help me? And I'll shoot them resources because I have openly talked about that. They feel so openly to receive it from me, and there's no trepidation, that there's no sort of like question of their intellectual ability, and there's no question of their, competency level to like, man, I don't need you to do this. It's like, no, man, I'll follow your lead on this, doc. Matter of fact, man, if you say go to this person, I'll trust you. And that's been so beautiful to watch because I love watching men just humble themselves. And I tell brothers, man, I get it, man. Listen, I played ball like I was him. I was a dog. I was a dog. Like I was a killer. Like I was a man raw. But man, it's okay to be meek and to be a comprehensive man to say, you know what, man, I'm at a place where I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And oftentimes, Spice, that's what my prayer is to God.
That what?
God, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Okay. Direct me.
Like, direct me. And I think that's just such beauty in being able to say that out loud.
So right there, are we living in a time that men have permission to be meek, though? Because one of the things that we are constantly hearing about, right, social media or even in our community chats and our conversations is the question around masculinity. I'm going to have you speak on this.
I know you're going to have to talk about this.
Yep.
I'm not going to touch this masculinity piece. Listen, here's what I'm going to say, guys. You have to be able to touch a full range of masculinity, a full spectrum. You have to be able to touch anger. You have to be able to touch joy. You have to be able to touch calmness. You have to be able to touch compassion, patience. You have to be able to touch all of those things and understand when to disseminate them. You have to. Masculinity is a full range of emotions. We have to stop limiting masculinity to anger and to rage and aggression. Masculinity is just like, wow, man, them some beautiful flowers. Without questioning your sexuality, you ain't a man because you looking at them flowers like, man, we have to move beyond that. And
how did it get to that though? To where you guys don't have permission to feel or to think positive things or to share or express yourself?
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother episode.
A whole nother episode. Society, because we got away from humanizing men. And I'm not saying that there are not some men that have benefited from, and I hate the use from some toxic traits in their masculinity, but I'm not calling masculinity toxic.
It is not. I agree.
There are some traits that men can operate in that can be toxic. But to understand masculinity, and again, I can't share without sharing my faith. Jesus represent masculinity on so many levels because he was the Lion of Judah and also the Lamb of God. And what I mean about that, he knew when to roar and he knew when to be quiet. Mm-hmm. He knew when to hold his shield up, and then he knew when to hold his sword up. And I'm saying that for men, that you can't wait for the world to be acceptance of who you are as a man. You have to be able to create that in yourself, and you have to be able to create that in your own life and exercise it through the way the way that you live. I kid you not. There are so many men that would be like, bro, I'm talking about like dogs, like dudes that play in the league. I'm talking about NBA players that hit me up and like, yo, Jay, man, I just went bought these flowers. Check out my arrangements, bro. What you think? And the banter back and forth is, I'm like, yo, King, those are beautiful, bro. Those are dope. And there's nothing that we think about it because I live in my full masculinity.
Yeah.
I'm not. Oh, I don't want to say that. I don't want to. I mean,
you're not limited.
Man, listen. Whenever I come out to LA, I always go work out at Gold's Gym in Venice. I love the energy there. I always go work out there, and I mean, it's some dudes in there, man.
That's where the real fitness beefcakes go.
There's some dudes in there, man. That are on point. And I saw a brother, black guy, man. He was in there. We both in there killing it, and I was like, man, bro, you look good, man. You look good. That man had the biggest smile on his face, man. He said, oh, man, I appreciate that, bro. I said, yeah, black man, but, man, you own it, man. And so we get to talking about Asian and different things like that. And, he's talking about he was in his 40s. I said, oh, man, you killing it, bro. And he was like, man, you killing it. I said, bro, man, we just want to age well. In that moment, because here's what you see with a lot of men. Mm-hmm. There's a guard up.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I would do is I'm gonna disarm you, because I've never seen a man that I wanted to be, and I've never seen a man that I cannot acknowledge. Meaning I'm comfortable in Jay when I say that I've never seen a man that I wanted to be like, because I'm comfortable and I like who I am. But in that, I'm also able to see the light, see the gift, see the amazing, see the beauty, and see the uniqueness that another man had, and affirm him in that.
Yeah. And
stand on it and not feel some type of way. And then it shatters their own preconceived notions.
Yeah.
Like, wow, man, bro, I appreciate that, bro. Like, and I think when we have that, that will begin to debunk a lot of these toxic messages that we're receiving, that man can't be this, man can't. I'm being that. And then I also, and I used to think the same thing. But if you operate in that, that's what it will be. But when you begin to function and operate in such a place of just joy, and a place to where, like, I'm not a pushover dude, and I'm not out here beating on my chest. I'm a man. You don't have to. It just you be, because that's just who you are.
So are we in a state where traditional masculinity is dying, or we're redefining it?
I think it's both. I think traditional masculinity is dying. You don't see men being men anymore. When you get to talking about brothers who have trades, and brothers who, whether it's HVAC, whether brothers who are plumbers, whether it's brothers who have lawn business, I've seen the faces of other men kind of like, and I'm saying to myself, what is that about? Because the HVAC and the plumbers and all of these guys with the trade, these are the new millionaires. Like, what's this frowning about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because me and my cousin had a long service growing up, and I got a joy out of cutting grass. I like cutting grass even to today. So the traditional masculinity, as far as like men doing manly things, is dying, right? Because brothers are kind of like, I don't want to do that. But then here's the other part of it. Women frown on these particular jobs.
So you think we're contributing to...
So there, in some way, women are contributing, because if you were to tell a woman that you have a lawn business, in her mind, I can't tell my girlfriends, hey, girl, he got a lawn business, but this brother also has a $1.5 million contract with the local school district where he cuts their grass year round. And then he also beautifies the city, and he also has a contract with other businesses that, you know what I mean? So we have to be mindful of how we speak about certain things, because when we begin to speak about things negatively, I'm telling you, it impacts the level of perception that brothers will be like, man, I ain't finna cut no grass. Man, I ain't finna be on top of no building, man. A plumber, man, I ain't finna be, you know what I'm saying, moving shit. That's what they're thinking in their mind.
But we celebrate your guys' strength. We want you guys to protect, provide, do the...
Listen to what you just said. You celebrate the strength, but will you celebrate the job title? And I'm not saying I'm not saying
you're not saying me. I'm thinking I'm thinking on behalf of a lot of women.
Because
and
again,
I'm not in disagreement with you. Everything is very perception based, especially with things being so public now.
Right.
Everybody wants to live a certain lifestyle, look like their man is doing it.
Exactly.
The thing.
But that man is doing the thing if he has a business that is flourishing. Not every guy is a pro athlete. Not every guy is an attorney. Not every guy is a consultant. Not every guy, is an engineer. Like, there are some brothers who enjoy what they do. And the masculinity of the traditional masculinity, I don't think is dying because men are killing it. I think it's dying because society is like, give us this, but keep that. We'll take the penis, but if you get to talking about your feelings, like, traditional man, just shut up. Because you hear that. Traditional man didn't talk about his feelings.
But I think we are crying for your guys' sensitivity. I don't think that...
But I think it's oxymoronic.
I know, it's a very complicated position that we sit in, because as women, we are actually craving your emotional intelligence, and we want the intimacy, but we also are screaming for the strength and masculinity as well. And it is hard, because what message are we sending you, and how do you know how to behave with the rise and the increase of our success and our ability to be independent? We're also seeing, the call for, soft girl season. So if there's a threat on masculinity, what does that mean to our femininity? It's like, it gets complicated. And that's a whole nother episode. I'm gonna bring you back for a whole nother episode.
And I'm glad that you said that, because the messaging has become confusing, because part of my masculinity is me expressing how I feel about something that I don't like that you did. Masculinity is not just about my strength in being able to lift something and provide. Masculinity is also my ability to express how I feel in this moment. And to express how I feel in this moment, that this doesn't change my love that I have for you, but in this moment, I don't like how you said that. And I think we're limiting masculinity from a performative perspective and not just from a being. Meaning that, hey, in this moment, babe, you my girl, I rock with you, but babe, come on, man. You got to stop going from 0 to 100. You know what I'm saying? And because if you limit masculinity to just this performative perspective, this where they will operate in. So we have to begin to celebrate and acknowledge that if you meet a man like me, who's emotionally intelligent, who's emotionally aware, who's emotionally stable, who's also spiritually sound, that in my gut, in my spirit, I can discern when I'm like, something ain't right.
Yeah.
And not it be, oh, you sassy because you saying you don't feel something. Well, why is it that we want women to acknowledge their intuition and we're not encouraging men to acknowledge their insight?
Agreed. I will, because I teach energies, right? Masculinity and femininity, and from an energy standpoint. I will say, though, you acknowledging your intuition or your feelings, that is you leaning into your feminine energy, which are actually required for balance and for a healthy relationship. You have to be able to pivot between both.
Absolutely.
As women, we have to be able to pivot between both. But I think it is frowned upon when you guys lean into your feminine energy when a woman doesn't call for it, right? When you are leaning into your feelings unless warranted,
Well, give me an example.
So the one that you gave. Let me tell you what you're doing right now that I don't like. Well, that's not a time that I want you to lean into your feelings. I want you to lean into your feelings when I want cuddles and I want you to tell me how great I am, but I don't necessarily want you to lean into your feelings when it's at the detriment of my ego or how I feel about myself.
Yeah, but how does that work, though?
It doesn't.
I know,
it's chaotic,
right?
And it's toxic.
Yeah.
But this is what we are battling. We both should have permission to share our feelings. We both should have permission.
Yeah, I'm like.
But this is what I'm saying. You said, well, you'll be called, sassy for it because you're acknowledging your feelings. And we too have to, I think, grow in our expectations and the realisticness of you guys having permission to share, because we're screaming for it. We crave it. We want the emotionally available man. But do we know how to handle the emotionally available man?
Pause. Say that again, Spice. Say that again
we
for
want
the
the
good people in
emotionally
the back.
available man, but do we know how to handle the emotionally available man? Because to your point, you will hold us more accountable. You will tell us about ourselves. You will, but we also want you to be reflective as well, right? And I just think that there's a certain level of growth that is required on both of our ends, like male and female, masculine and feminine energy. That we like, it's requiring growth, and I think that as women, we pull back the layers, and we're more celebrated for pulling back the layers in our emotions and how we communicate with each other. You mentioned earlier that you complimented a man in the gym, and I was like, oh, bravo. Because men, unless it comes from a woman, don't get compliments. So you're going days without being affirmed unless it comes from your woman, because you guys don't naturally uplift one another and compliment each other and affirm one another. So unless we're doing it, we can't be fully responsible for that. Men need to be doing that with each other the same way women do it with each other. And we also give it to men, but you guys got to be pouring into each other more.
But then again, we're asking men to do something in an adult age that they were not developed in a young age.
Correct.
And so I think, we are often sort of pressing them to be what they've never seen.
Correct. We're asking for quick evolvement, though, because we're evolving so quick that we're like, well, we want you to grow as fast as us, and we want you to get with the times.
And I have to tell you, ladies, that there has to be a level of patience, and I'm not saying this with your spouse, but there has to be a level of patience that is exercised, because healing is a journey.
Yep.
And let's say you take a man that's 35 who has trauma from age 13. He's a good guy, but his trauma keeps him from not only seeing himself, but also keeps him from seeing others. And because the trauma can often blind you, because it rewires your brain in a way that you can't clearly depict, you can't clearly hear.
Yeah.
Because trauma ears hear different from ears that are healed.
Yeah.
So you're not operating from a fence, you're operating from a balance of, this person is not talking about me as a person, they're talking about the behavior.
Yeah.
Two different things. And I think we're asking men, because women have evolved, and let me say this, women, you evolved quickly because you were educated. Here's what I mean by that. You were educated because you stayed in class. When boys got in trouble in school, a lot of my studies was on, third grade boys and how boys are socialized and how boys are often criminalized in the school system when their issue is mental. So you were in class, and again, this is not, and please hear me with the clear mind. I'm not saying that it's an excuse to justify, but I'm saying is that he didn't have the opportunity to learn the range of emotions and have an understanding of the development, psychological and physiological, that would be needed to operate in this world. So you had a head start on him socially and emotionally. You were able to express how you felt. How do you feel, Spice? Are you okay? You were given that as a little girl. He wasn't. He got sent to Miss Johnson class, and he got sent to ISS, in school suspension. He got suspended in some cases. In some cases, they called the officer down. So he was already told that he was a problem.
Yeah.
And I would go on a limb to say the problem was he was not loved at home. So you now have a boy who don't have a level of understanding of his emotion, don't have a level of awareness of his own humanity, and he's just surviving. And you tell him at 35, you need to go heal. He don't even have a clue what that is. And what I tell women is that you look at me, this was a journey. What people see at 42, it was a journey that started at 31.
Right, it was a process.
And it was a process of surrendering. And not only did I have to be patient with the process, I had to be patient with myself. So when you are in a space, because it's like right now, I comprehend things so quickly. It is asinine of me to think that other men process and think like I do. I have great mentors. I have great support group. I'm surrounded by great men, not perfect men, but I'm surrounded by men who pour into me. So I have to be conscious that most men, if not probably 99% of the men, do not have the circles that I have. So I have to have a little more grace for them when I'm approaching them, to not think that they will understand homogeneity. What the hell are you talking about, dude? It's just a word that means having a level of sameness. You know what I'm saying? To where, like, I'm not being Dr. J, I'm just J. And I think what happens is women take themselves in it rather than removing themselves out of it and says, you know what? He's 35, but that's a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And I get it that you want the 35-year-old man to be ready today so you can marry him. And you can ride off and say, I got my man, I got my Boaz, I got my Buki. You know what I'm saying? I get it, man. But it's unrealistic because it's, oh my God, man, it's so many years of pain that these men have held on to. And so many men tell me about my friendship with my best friend, Joe. I've had guys walking to me in the airport and be like, yo, King, man, y'all friendship is blessing me, bro. I'm 50. I've always wanted that. It's so many men that grew up and they just didn't have any. I was reading something as I was coming on my way here, just listening to men who, a guy said, man, I can't remember, he's 40 or 45. He was just like, man, I've never had a man just say anything positive to me. You heard David Banner talk about his dad telling him, what the hell you smiling for? I pay all the bills and I ain't smiling. Why are you smiling? And he said he stopped smiling when he heard that.
Oh my God.
So there's so many men that have been emotionally incarcerated, as my good brother Jason Wilson says, that they are emotionally incarcerated and they don't know how to break free.
Yeah.
That's why the work that I do is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to free as many as I can to get them well, and not to get them, sisters, not to get them well for a relationship, to get them well for themselves.
That's what we really want. But yeah, I feel.
And I know because
I'm joking.
And I know that they want to well for these relationships. But it's like I want him to be able to understand himself.
Yes, that is key, right? I think. And I'm honest with women. I'm very clear.
And what's the feedback that you get when you're honest with them, Spice?
That's a whole nother episode. In my lifetime, I do not think that I will see probably or be privy to you, to the male species, catching up to us emotionally in my lifetime. However, I would love to sow the seeds, you and I, as we are doing the work that we are doing, right? Warriors of God, soldiers, that in our children's lifetime, they will be able to be equal in their emotional understanding and expression and intelligence. And that is why we do what we do.
Absolutely.
But I got to be realistic with them and we're going to have to be more patient. Like we're going to have to love them through this.
And I know, sisters, that it's frustrating. Like, I do not want to gloss over that. I know it's frustrating because it's very frustrating because they see Spice. They see the pictures of the baby. They see the pictures of the husbands. And I get it, man. I get it. And this is why I'm so grateful that God, chose me, because I often think that if I didn't survive, who would be the example?
Ooh, we need you.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I often think about that, and I often think about, how the world came to know me during the moment of George Floyd, and just how God orchestrated that entire thing to allow my voice to be heard, because it's beyond time for us to begin healing and evolving as men, to grow
Yes.
up. Like I that's one of my desires for brothers, is to be able to evolve and to be able to pour into the woman, to create safety for the woman, to create the security. Because let me tell you, some brothers, there's safety in a woman when you can create space for her to just be fully herself.
Yeah. 1,000%.
And there is a favor, there is a peace, there is a joy, and there's also the endless opportunities for you to evolve in whatever your endeavors are, because you have a safe place to land. I'm telling you, man,
But
when you me,
you got to heal first, though.
you got to heal
Before
first.
you can even
you
give that.
got to heal first, man, so you don't misuse it, because anything you misuse, you are abusing.
Yeah.
And too many times, and I saw this, and thank God my mom found love again at 60. I'm so happy
yay,
for her.
mama.
And she just made 66, because I saw what she went through in her first marriage, and I saw what my mom went through in her second marriage. And my mom she's a firecracker, but the emotional support that she provided to me as a son was life-changing.
Yeah.
She didn't know what depression was, and she didn't have a clue, and she just, hey, I'm gonna stand with you. And just to have a woman that will stand with you, but also as she's standing with you, she see you standing for yourself.
Yeah. That's extremely necessary.
Yeah.
Instrumental. Pivotal.
Yeah.
You are going to share with us where people can find you, where they can get help at. Our fellas need you. Couples need you. Where can they reach out to you at?
Yes. I want to talk about the book, Just Heal Bro. Brothers, this is a book that is a game changer. We did a tour for the past 3 years, the Just Heal Bro tour. You can go and to our website, and also to our Instagram page, Just Heal Bro. For the past 3 years, we traveled 36 cities across this country, and we were able to help 18,000 men of color. Because we had black brothers, we had brown brothers, we had some white brothers show up at times. We had brothers that were there because they was like, yo, man, I need the help, and I want to get it, and it starts here. And all of that started from the book, Just Heal Bro, which is a testament of the work that I've done in therapy that started with journaling. The prompts are very provocative. I'm going to ask tough questions. The prompts is going to pull things out of you that are hidden. And I encourage you, brothers, to go grab that book, because that is a good first step to take. And especially for you brothers who feel that you have not had a voice, because that's why I wrote it, because I didn't have a voice as a little boy. KJB Coaching, I still see clients virtually and provide therapeutic service there. You can follow me, King J Barnett, on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And brothers, I'm encouraging you that as you begin to heal, you're going to begin to have a better experience in your life with yourself, because the relationship that you have with yourself will determine the relationships that you have with others.
Amen. All right, you guys already know you can play with my Twitter or stroke my IG at SpicyMadi. You're going to go to TheSpicyLife.com, schedule a consultation if you need it. You're also going to click and subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and there you have it. You have just been spiced.
The Spicy